Okay, so this video was a inspiration I had. Mateus and Matteo, and I texted Matteo. I'm going to get confused here. Before
I know,
Matteo
it's too many Mateos, Matteo.
came to my place, I texted Mateus and I said, "Hey, I'm going to be in LA here, and I want to do a video with you and Matteo." And he wrote back. He goes, "The Mateos," and I said,
Mateos.
"Exactly." So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
It's great to have you both here. Both of you guys are from different places, and I discovered that your names would both be Matthew, right?
Yeah.
You were,
Yeah.
Italian version of Matteo and Brazilian,
Brazilian version,
Portuguese version of Matteo. Yeah.
How old are you, Mateus?
30.
You're
Just
30.
turned 30.
You're 27.
27, that's right.
Okay, so these guys are these guitar hotshots. Now, I've been following both of them forever. They have such very different playing styles, too, which to me is absolutely fascinating. Matteo, I first saw your videos in 2016, but you had started putting stuff up around 2014, right?
Yeah, I put out the first video in 2014. I remember it was a Paul Gilbert cover. I think it was technical difficulties. I thought I was able to do that, but actually, you know, when
I've seen that video. I'm like, holy cow, bro, this freaking
I wanted to
kid.
make it private, you know, because it's not really, that's the worst video I made so far. The quality of the video is not that good. The audio quality is not that good either.
This is fascinating because both of you guys started making videos and putting them out there before I even started making videos, and I'm 100 years older than you guys.
I thought about making videos because my friends at school, they were talking about YouTube channels and content creators, you know?
Yeah.
And back when I was younger, you know, there were like a separation between, you know, content creators and musicians. Now it's more like blended in, you know? You need to be, in order to be a musician, you know, you also need to be a content creator, because otherwise, if you are not on social media, you don't exist basically right now.
That is a fascinating thing. What do you think about that?
I always deal with this duality of like, because music to me was never something that I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to make it. And I think like this is sort of a downside, because again, that's, I mean, we spoke on our first video, like my creativity side. As soon as I got too much, you know, stuck into this Instagram, you have to post it, you got to keep it up kind of thing. Like, okay, I got to establish a goal where I'll be posting every week or so. When it comes to like music, at least for me, I just feel like the more organic, the better. So the less you think of, oh, I have to post it, at least for me. But on the other hand, it's important because one thing that I've noticed towards the years, musicians were only concerned or worried about just playing your own instrument, and that's it.
Yeah.
And right now, with this multitask function that we always have to deal of, not only, oh, but now we have to make, you know, be content creators, we have to take care of production too.
That's
you know,
right. You have to
because
you got to be a filmmaker.
Exactly, like, but if you just play a video of you playing guitar just by itself and it doesn't have like extra things, it could be just another thing, you know? So that kind of pushes people to this sort of, it pushes the bar a little bit higher on a way of like, oh wow, now we have to see the picture in a, you know, larger frame, I feel like.
I think the negative side is that people are more worried about packaging a content rather than just making music, you know? And it needs to be on the other side, like you make music first and then you make some content out of it, but your first goal doesn't need to be always going viral. And people are too worried about that. And I understand that because that's how you get exposure nowadays. The positive thing is that you are able to do this in whatever city you want. You no longer need to be in Los Angeles or London or New York in order to be well known. I did everything I did from a little town near Palermo. It's called Casteldaccia. Nobody knows about Casteldaccia unless like me and my father, basically. That's the positive thing, you know. There are, like everything in life, there are positive things and negative things, yeah.
I remember back in 2007, and my younger brother John is a guitar player, and he's like, "Hey, you got to check out this guy, Guthrie Govan." I'm looking at the thing. I was like, "This guy's unbelievably good." And YouTube, I realized, was a place that you could discover new people.
Guthrie is a special case because I'm pretty sure like he only needed to be noticed.
Right.
And somebody to be like sooner or later. That's what I'm just
He
trying
just
to say.
needed a
like,
camera in
exactly.
front of him.
That was
right?
the only thing, because I mean, the way that guy plays is so special that it was just like a matter of time.
Yeah.
You know, but it's interesting you saying that, because he was probably the very first internet sensation without being intentional with it. He was
Yes.
pretty much like, all right, cool, I have a gig, I have to shoot these videos for this company, do it.
Yeah.
And that's actually like Johnny, the one of the owners of Gem Track Central, he was even telling me stories that they would pretty much come up with the backing track or whatever music piece and just have like the notations, like the structure of the song on the ground for him, and he was just looking, okay, cool, those are the notes, and he would pretty much just soloing over.
Yeah.
Like listening to the track once or twice, and that's it. So, I mean, he's like Messi of guitars, you know? It's just too natural for him. And he's just like, all right, I'm just doing this, whatever.
I think he's one of the best modern players, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I watched him, I was like, you know, not necessarily because of the technique, but because of the phrasing.
Phrasing, the development of ideas, unbelievable.
Yeah, and the rhythmic displacement of the ideas and the timing, you know, it was, the first time was really amazing.
And that's a good point of, I mean, having the social media now, because again, as you said, you're from the south of Italy and you're just recording your little stuff there. Same thing for me, like I'm from the center of Brazil and nobody knows my hometown as well much. And I've posted videos there and people are like, oh, cool, this kid's kind of cool. I want to watch more of his stuff. So that's the independence that back in the days were so much harder for musicians to achieve. Now I feel like if you know the right strategy, you could be able to do things.
How much stuff did you ever pick up online?
I remember maybe one of the first lines I learned from him actually was something like something like that.
Too kind.
Yeah, yeah, and I remember that was the, you know, the good thing about the guitar community is that you learn from everyone basically. I learned things from people that has like 500 followers on Instagram, you know. And I saw like a 40-second video, oh, I like that lick, I want to copy it, you know. And that was the same when I first discovered Mateus. There were a few nice things that I really loved about his playing. And I try to sometimes implement it on my playing, you know. And I hear a lot of Hendrix on his playing. In a way, we are all influencing each other, I think. So that's why I love the guitar community, because there's this kind of community where you can pick up everything, I think. That's how I see it, at least. So, yeah, and Mateus is an incredible player.
Well, thank you, Matteo. It means a lot, bro. I mean, you're the hottest kid in the market right now. Everybody talks about you with, you know, the conviction that, you know, you're a real deal, and it's amazing to
Thank you so
see,
much.
you know, how amazing you are. And yeah, man, you're gonna fly high and high.
Thank you so much.
The man is not an island, and I feel that, I mean, having the mixture of all these big names, such as, you know, Hendrix, John Mayer, even John Frusciante for me was a big guy. People normally don't brand Frusciante as like that sort of like guitar hero technique wise, let's say that. The good part of having, you know, the access to. Because back in the days, for me, for example, being in Brazil, I would have to go to a music store and try to find those VHS.
Interesting.
And like, oh, there's a couple of VHS available here from this national players, and sometimes, you know, Paul Gilbert's video, and I'll be like, oh, cool, I could buy it, and then I have that 1 hour and 30 minutes. And nowadays, like, if you go to everybody's page, there's a, this is my guitar course, how to play things, and blah, 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 blah. So the axis of things, you know, I could go to Matteo Mancuso's page or Instagram, YouTube, whatever, and just spend the entire week watching every single video and could be able to like, okay, I would love to replicate that thing, you know? And going back to the style, I mean, I got it a lot from, I would say John Mayer was the main guy. He changed the, I mean, that double stop thing, you know?
Yeah.
It's, again, I love harmonies, like, could be like from a vocal harmony or whatever. So instead of just playing this, I just want to play. Everything's double, you know, like I don't know. I like that kind of, that nuance, you know. And we were talking about, you know, the approach of lines. But the guy that actually opened the horizon for me was a keyboard player that used to be my bandmate from Tori Kelly's band. You know, he was just playing his Moog, but with this harmonizer pitch pedal, and I'm like, this sounds amazing. It's like grabbing the whammy pedal and then you just have that harmonizer on. But somehow he was just playing things so musical, and I was like, wow, I want to incorporate those things into my playing too. And then of course you connect the dots and you see like, oh, John Mayer used that a lot because he got that from Steve Ray, and then Steve Ray got that from Hendrix, and then you're just connecting the dots. And of course you have to replicate it first, and then you try to incorporate that and make it in your own. And then I found out that there was like another huge school, you know, the gospel school, you know,
Yes.
like the gospel players, like these R&B guys, you know, the church dudes, they played that thing over and over forever.
Right, that's
you know,
right.
so it's just so nice to see that, you know, sometimes people will be like, oh man, this guy's like coming up with like this new thing, but there's always, you know, somebody in the past coming up with like those things too, you know? So it's so cool.
Matteo, were you influenced? Did you ever listen to John Mayer? Was he a person that you were?
Yeah. The first album I listened to it was Continuum, I think, and it's maybe one of his most famous ones. And especially when I started, I was really into the blues, and I think for every guitar player, it doesn't matter the style of what you want to play. Learning the blues, it's part of the guitar history, I think. So if you learn that kind of stuff, it will help you with actually every kind of style you want to play. So it's more about expression rather than just pure technique, because blues solos are sometimes really like meat and potatoes of a solo, you know. But you don't need to get technical or have a lot of information on a solo in order to be good. And on the other hand, if you have too much information, sometimes it gets a little worse, you know? So doing a good thing with just few material, and that's what Jon is doing, actually. If you analyze some of his solos, sometimes he's just doing the pentatonic stuff, but he uses it in a way that, you know, you are really amazed by the musicality of it, not just the vocabulary or the harmonic information, you know?
It's one thing that I find that I've been noticing, actually. I just had this thought, because when people were like talking about me back in 2014, 15, I'm like, oh, bro, there's this Instagram guitar player. There's one like mutual thing, I would say, in between the Mateus Club.
Right.
It's like, I mean, of course, Mateus' left hand is spectacular, but I feel like there's something about the right hand And I don't, when I mention the right hand, it doesn't mean necessarily like the rhythm, like the pocket, but because like I play a lot of the finger style thing, you know?
Yes.
So I mix a lot with like pick and without pick and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And Matteo doesn't even have a pick in his hands. So it's funny to know that if we're talking about like the trend or like this new generation, there's something regarding the right hand.
Right.
You know, it's more about the right hand instead of left hand. Of course, you have to know how to play it.
Yeah.
But there's something about the way you approach the string with your right hand.
I just realized that you hold the pick in between your middle finger there, and
Yeah.
you do that a lot, don't you?
Yeah, because like if I want to play, I don't know. But I could also be able to.
Wow.
That's
so I
amazing.
could just like mess around.
That's how you do that. I was wondering.
Beautiful. I use hybrid picking for some of the lines.
Sometimes,
Right?
Yes.
yeah.
How do you use your middle finger while you're holding the pick? Because you are using your middle finger too, right?
Yeah, holding the pick like this kind of makes it possible because I could
Yes.
still, I could not explore much, but I
Yeah.
could still be able to reach the.
That is a great demonstration. I always thought that you're like a magician, and your pick would just kind of appear in your hand.
Yeah, there's always the moment where I could like, I could just like, when I do like a legato and I could move from. I've seen, there's some people that, hold it or put it here or whatever. And I want to be able to, explore that in a way. Andre, another guitar player from Brazil, Nieri, he holds the pick like on his pinky.
Matteo, did you ever play with the pick?
No, I actually never learned how to play with the pick. So it's kind of my weak point.
Do you ever pick up a pick just for fun and see if you can try and play, or don't you?
Yeah.
Can I see
but
it?
It was just for fun. Yeah.
Can I see it for real?
Well,
it's gonna freaking destroy now.
I don't know. The first time I was using a pick, I was more like. But it is bouncy, It's not an even movement. So I can't control the wrist movement.
Does it seem completely impractical to you when you use it then?
I don't know. It feels like I have something between my fingers that it's hurting me.
Could you play now without the pick so I could just hear like the texture?
There are certain lines that you literally
maybe
you cannot play it with a pick.
It was this one, I think.
Oh, there's no way.
That you cannot. No, it's unpickable, and you really can't hybrid pick it.
No, there's no.
And you get the A with the pinky.
Yeah. You see, like
it's made for finger style.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, I think if I have one note per string, it's way easier for me than having like, I think this is way easier than just doing. This thing is actually way harder for me to play rather than. Because you need to have a lot of synchronization between the left and the right hand in order to do you know, the classical Malmsteen runs. In order to do that, you need to have a lot of synchronization. So these kind of lines are way easier for me. So that's why I try to build my vocabulary based on this kind of arpeggios, actually.
Okay, so if you guys don't play for a day, I know you've gone for 50. How many days did you go without playing?
It was more than 2 months, 60 something.
When you started playing back again, which hand was the one that had the most trouble? Anything, or was it
The right
just no
hand was
problem?
always my weakest. Maybe that's why sometimes I change it to this, you know, like to the finger style. Like I always had problems with like that kind of thing, you know.
Oh, I've seen you rip some fast runs. Oh, come on, man.
But it's more like, I mean, if you see like a very specific metal player or a country player,
Yeah.
you see it like the right hand, or even Nuno,
Yeah,
Paul
yeah.
Gilbert,
Oh.
all these guys, like the right hand and the left hand are there.
Yes.
And for me, I feel like my left hand is a little bit more evoluted. It's a little more like, you know, advanced comparing to my right hand, like the precision of it.
And do you notice a difference if is it your, you told me it's your left hand that gets,
Yeah. It's the first one that get a little bit messy with time. So, like if I don't play for a week, I can still play pretty much everything I do with my right hand, but the left hand is not there, you know.
But it kind of makes sense in a way because I mean, from what I see from your playing, you're very like, you use a lot of legatos.
Yeah.
You know, like in the chromatic passes and stuff like that. And that requires a lot of left hand work.
yes.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense. Like for players that play a lot of chromatic lines and things like that, your left hand needs to be like, you know, impeccable.
You know, I changed my technique all over the years because I really like the sound with my free stroke technique. Like there are some legatos on this kind of lines, but back when I started playing like that, it was also, everything was picked actually.
You're not
So-
doing any legato. Yeah, you're not doing any
I didn't
legato.
do any legato, and I was able to do it, but the sound I didn't really like the sound. So that's why I started to use some legato, because the pronunciation was just better. So if you hear a lot of sax players, you know, playing, it's not really. It's not, the pronunciation is not.
No,
this.
without any
Yeah.
without any legatos or slides, even it's hard to play with a swing.
Yeah, you know, the same phrase. It's much more, you know, the phrasing is better, you know, because if you sneak some legato in it, it will just sound better for me.
What gauge string? You play tens, right?
I play tens.
You play tens?
It depends. When I'm playing tallies and strats, I'm mainly playing nines.
Okay.
But Les Pauls and yeah, like a guitar like Matteo would be more like tens for me. It has like a smaller like scale, right?
Yeah, the scale is a little bit smaller.
Yeah, so
they-
smaller scales, I'll go for tens and nines.
Okay.
But I might go to eights through your influence.
You know, Paul uses 8.5, he told me. But so Yngwie, eights. A lot of the guys that come into my studio, they already come in playing eights. Do you guys ever play with straps when you're sitting down?
No, when I'm sitting down, I'm just.
I don't see you play
It
with a strap.
bothers me so much, but I mean, I've been forcing way more now to play, like to practice standing
up.
Yeah, but when I'm sitting down, like, why would I have a strap? Because it's always like, it always falls down and things like that. I'm like, and then I always stake it. I'm like, I'm tired of this, you know?
Do you always have your strap at the same height, or do you adjust it sometimes?
For me, it's different because it all depends. If I'm playing for a pop artist, I cannot.
You have to have it lower, right?
Yeah.
You do.
Know, I gotta have the rock and roll attitude.
Yeah.
Maybe the playing wouldn't be as perfect, but still, like, the attitude is what matters the most. But of course, if I'm playing a guitar camp in front of Matteo Mancuso, I gotta play my guitar like this, man. You know? That's right. Or maybe I could just pretend, oh man, you know, my knee is injured. Let me just play sitting down here. That's one of the things too. I'm like, damn, why did I make this so complicated for me to play? You know, like the hand stretch sometimes. It all depends on the mood. You know, I mean, of course, if you go rock and roll and you have more gain, it's easy. It gets easier to play those things. I mean, not everybody's like Nuno Bettencourt that plays like a Ramon and shreds like crazy. But,
Well, it's interesting because Nuno plays low, but Eddie Van Halen actually had his guitar up pretty high. But Eddie always looked cool.
Because he was Eddie, I mean,
Okay,
he can look cool even like that, you know.
All right, let's talk about Eddie for a second.
Oh, please. Nuno, please don't kill us.
No, Nuno, if Nuno was sitting here, he'd be joining in.
He would be like,
That's his favorite topic is Eddie. He loves Eddie. He probably, if he watches this, he's going to be like, dudes, why didn't you invite me here to talk about Eddie? How can you not be influenced, play guitar,
I know, man.
electric guitar, and not be influenced by Eddie?
It's just like the way he plays. I mean, so revolutionary, you know, like all the techniques and. But besides all that, you know, he was just so musical. You know, all the riffs, the compositions.
The compositions.
I remember when I heard the news. You know, I just had to. I stopped everything I did, and So my favorite solo of Eddie is Right Now, of that song Right Now, and I just played that song and I was like in tears by the time that the solo kicked in. Because again, it's just like the way he could speak a message through his guitar. It's just amazing. And those are the things that schools are not going to be able to teach because it's just from the heart. It's from, I don't know, it's a divine blessing. And Eddie was that guy, you know. He made history by just being him and loving guitar so much.
I think for me, as I said in the interview, and it was kind of my introduction to shred playing. But of course, Van Halen was not only shred. And I remember one of the first tunes I heard was Ice Cream Man. In that song in particular, Eddie shines because of the rhythm, the phrasing, you know, and the ideas were so fresh for the time, you know. And then everybody in the 80s tried to catch up with him.
Yeah.
But they didn't really manage to.
They never did. So Eddie's doing that stuff. They're just playing it live in the studio.
I was gonna say, like, it feels like he's just having the fun of it. It's
Right.
just like, I'm just gonna have fun with this thing, man. It's interesting about Eddie because we're talking about technique, but I mean, if we have to make that as a theory, every little component, you know, like even his guitar, like his signature guitar,
Right.
like the Frankenstein,
Like
the tone.
Right. The way he set his amp, the way he used effects,
Exactly,
the way
effects.
he put the.
Having an interlude like Eruption, how could that be possible? Let's just be honest. Imagine this nowadays.
Right. On YouTube, they had the drum track from the drum overheads. So they literally just played it, and then he went into You Really Got Me.
You gotta be freaking kidding me, dude.
Right?
Wow.
This is so good.
That is just one take.
Of course it is.
Of course it is, right? And that feedback that they mute in between the two phrases.
Back in the days, there was something about playing with others, having other people in the room, and just like, let's just feel this, like have the atmosphere going, and whatever we feel, we're just gonna go for it, you know? And that's one of the things, like, I don't like when music gets put in a box. And I feel like back in those times, even with labels determining things like, oh, it needs to be under 3 minutes, things like that, we're still, like, they still had the atmosphere of being together and feeling each other and being like, yeah, let's just go with it. You know, that's something that I feel like nowadays it gets a little bit more difficult, you know? Do you think back in the days, I mean, labels were, of course, there, but do you think like the way they were dictating the music was as abrupt as it is now?
The producers were the ones kind of calling the shots. They let the songs breathe. There's a funny Quincy Jones clip where he talks about this Michael Jackson tune.
Well known that Michael sent me a note. Could you please take off the violins in the introduction? No, it's messed up my groove. You know what that line was? Diddle 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 diddle. The identifying line on the goddamn song.
So he said, take it off?
Yeah.
And you said?
No way. I thought, you don't tell me what to do. No.
Who was right?
Well, what ended up on the record?
Sometimes you need a producer that is also a passionate musician. You
Yes.
know, maybe this gets a little bit more rare nowadays. Like you had this distinction between like the artist, and then the producers are more like businessmen. Sometimes they behave more like businessmen sometimes rather than just other musicians. And also because I mean, especially in the 70s, you have so much going on. I mean, there were Return to Forever, there were people like John McLaughlin,
right.
Weather Report, and at the same time on the rock and roll scene, there were Led Zeppelin or Deep Purple, there were all these guys. So there was so much going on that I think a musician in the 70s was more like, you know, you felt like the obligation of coming up with something new. That's why there was more experimentation, you know?
It's difficult nowadays in 2024 to actually do new things because so much has been done. But I think what you guys do, to me, is so special, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Both of you. I love your playing, and I appreciate you coming in and spending some time hanging out today. This has been really fantastic.
Thanks so
Rick.
much.
So keep doing what you're doing.
Obrigado.
Thank you.